Sharon, my wife, we enjoy coming down here. We do. This is a great place for us to come and just be ourselves. And of course, knowing your pastor as long as I've known him, that doesn't hurt, that's for sure. We're getting older, as you know. I don't show it much, but I am. I feel good on the outside. I still go to the gym 3 times a week. I still do tricep push downs for 300 pounds, but the inside is falling apart. So it happens. I was talking to Jerry, and he said it didn't bother him as long as he was good looking. So I don't know. But anyway, I guess as you get older, you get problems. Mr. Freeman and I back there were talking, and I know he's not getting any younger either. And Miss Sharon's birthday is Tuesday. She's probably going to hate me for saying this. She'll be 104. She doesn't even look like it. No, she'll be 73, isn't it, Mom? 73 years old, and I'll be 76 in July. We're getting older. But things happen. But I feel good. I really feel good. And you know what? I don't want to feel too good because the way this world's going, I'll be happy to leave this place, just to be honest with you. I'm looking forward to it all the time. Hey, Chris, good job, son, preaching or teaching this morning, wherever you want. Good job. Did they teach you to play that down PBI? No. That's Louisiana stuff, isn't it? Your wife, that Ohio woman, didn't rub off on you, did she? Good. I got a steel trap. No, I don't. Man, it's so good to see y'all. It's so good to see you. Hey, do you ever get up someday and just wonder if it's going to rain on your parade for the rest of your life? I mean, it just seems like everything is going bad, and you just want to quit. Quitting came easy to me. I started quitting on my own. Okay, quitting came easy to me because I'll tell you when I first noticed it in my own life. I was like 7 years old. And by the way, I'm a Tennessee native. I am not a Kentucky football fan or basketball fan. I think he's overpaid. He ought to be teaching high school or something. But anyway, I don't really care. I mean, they don't break me one way or the other. But I'm from over here in Lynchburg, Tennessee area. That's my home. Winchester, Lynchburg. I was born over there July the 9th, 1947. But we lived out in the boondocks. And when I got to be up at 7 years old, I started school late. Mother had this brilliant idea that I needed to go to school, first grade. And so we were dirt poor. So we moved in town and we moved to the projects. And I still remember today, 154 East Moore Street, the Dawson Apartments, Tullahoma, Tennessee. That's where we moved to. And it didn't mean nothing to me much other than we had indoor bathrooms. That thrilled the fire out of me. But other than that, no big deal. But when I started going to school, I began to realize that I looked different. I had those hand-me-down clothes and shoes that were really stuck out about 2 foot beyond what they needed to be. And the kids made fun of me. I was real small then. Boy, I long for those days. And I was real small, and everybody picked on me. And I hated it. And I went home to school. I told Mom, she'd out of school. I said, it's just not for me. It's just not for me, Mom. I don't think I'll go back. Thanks anyway. But no, you're going back to school. So the next day I'm back in school, and I hated it even more. So I thought, well, I'll start coming up with some excuses like some people use. The next morning I get up, I can't go today, Mom. Why? I've got a fever. Can't hardly breathe. I've got a fever. No, you don't. You're going to school. And I tried everything. Man, I had scarlet fever. I had polio. I had cancer. And finally one day, why can't you go today? I think I'm pregnant. I need to stay home. Get on the bus. Didn't work. I wanted to quit. I learned to quit early. Can I tell you something? quitting is just a part of our life. I guarantee you, I know your pastors wanted to quit. I bet you his wife wanted to quit. I know my wife wanted to quit, but the counselor told her, stay with me nevertheless. So, I mean, we always quitting something. Quitting school, quitting a job. I bet there's not a person in here, except maybe Calvin, that hasn't wanted to quit something. That's what we do. We're quitters. We're quitters. Well, I saw a YouTube thing the other day about a guy, a preacher, who said it never bothered him. He never wanted to quit in his life. Now, I watched a little farther and noticed the orderlies come and taking him back to his room. Something was wrong with him, that's for sure. But we want to quit. Let's go over here to the book of 2 Timothy. And by the way, Chris, anytime you or anybody teaches on the Apostle Paul, it just gets my attention. I mean, I love Apostle Paul, and I'm going to like anybody that wrote half the New Testament. I can't help it. I'm going to like anybody who tells me, be ye followers of me, because he's got a reason, because God gave him the message, I believe, for the church. And so I like it. And Chris, by the way, not too long ago, I was reading Paul's, in the book of Acts, around by verse 21, when he's going to Jerusalem, which I don't think he should ever went to begin with, because God sent several people in there to tell him, hey, don't go there. It's not going to turn out good. Sometimes, folks, God allows us to travel down a road that he doesn't really want us on, but he takes care of us. Thank God for that. Amen. And so, so what I did, Chris, I went to the bookstore, and I like to really, I get it. I study a lot. I'm up every day at 5:30. I study for 2 hours. Sometimes I'll study for 10 hours. I don't know why, but I just like to. But I bought me this map of Paul's missionary journey, and really the one where he goes to Rome. I really like that. And then I tell you, I have a lady that I know, she's a friend of mine. She has a printing place, and she blowed it up for me. It's pretty good size. And I followed Paul from the time he got on the boat there north of Jerusalem, Caesarea Philippi, and goes to Rome. And I was trying to figure all that stuff out. And you know and I'm going to show you this, Chris. I'm just for you in particular. But look in Galatians. That's a great book. By the way, you know the difference between Romans and Galatians? Romans tells you how justification got your salvation. Galatians tells you how justification keeps your salvation. That's the difference. Let's go over here to the book of Acts. Last chapter. This ain't got one thing to do with the sermon. I'm going to throw it in. Here he is in verse 11. He's on the little island there where he got shipwrecked. It's called St. Paul's Bay today. And he takes a boat and he goes up there. And in verse 12, they landed at Syracuse. We tarried there 3 days. And from thence we fetched the compass and came to Rhegium. And after one day, the south wind blew, and we came the next day to Puteoli. Now, here's the thing. I see things a lot of people don't. And he said in verse 13, after one day, the south wind blew. And I'm thinking, what's the big deal about the south wind blowing? I mean, who cares? Why is it so important that he wrote it down? But here's why. Because between the island of Sicily and the mainland of Italy, there's this little strip of water. It's only about 2 miles wide and about 20 miles long. It's called the Messina Strait. And it is so powerful and so dangerous that you can see it from space. And here's what makes it dangerous. Because every 6 hours, the current changes direction. One day, for 6 hours, it'll flow north to south, and then it'll switch and flow south to north, and then it switches and flows north to south, and so when you got a boat that has no motor, and all you got is a sail. That's why he said there that they're waiting for the south wind to blow north so they can get through there. All this stuff in the Bible is important. And I know sometimes we overlook that stuff, but Anyway, maybe you can use that somewhere, brother. Anyway, all right, we're in 2 Timothy. I like this book, 2 Timothy. It's just, man, it's so emotional to me. Paul writes 4 personal letters. 1 and 2 Timothy is a personal letter to Timothy. Titus is a personal letter to Titus. Philemon is a personal letter to Philemon. In 3 of those books, Paul makes his statement about somebody particular. He calls them his beloved son. He calls Timothy my beloved son. In the ministry, not like your son or my son, but in the ministry. In Titus, he refers to him as his son. And in the book of Philemon, you know he refers to his son Onesimus, the runaway slave. He refers to him as my son. So when you're reading Timothy or Titus or Philemon, you're reading somebody's personal mail. Now, I'm old enough at 75 to remember getting letters in the mail. I think some of y'all do too. We used to get them every now and then. And man, when they came to our house, it was such an exciting time because everybody, it was the TV of our day. You gathered around and Mama read the letter. We don't do that anymore. Got into phones. Then we got into the little handheld phones. And then I have trouble with mine. I'm an educated person to a degree, but I can't hardly operate my own phone and pump my own gas. I just have trouble with that stuff. And then, but now nobody gets a letter anymore. But I'm going to share one with you here in a minute. And so, if you showed me, said, preacher, I got a letter today from somebody and said, I want you to read it. I would read it. It would not mean to me what it meant to you, but I guarantee you I could read your letter and I could glean something from it. And so when I read Timothy and Titus and Philemon, it may be their personal letter, but I can glean something from it. And I'm going to show you something today that I hope will help you. I do this thing. Preacher, you may do it too. Whenever I'm reading something, and I probably read 200 books a year, I insert myself into whatever I'm reading. And by the people say, boy, you must read a lot of spiritual books. No, I don't. Hey, just because we're preachers don't mean we're way up here. I like them mystery things, don't y'all? Where they kill people. I like that. I like to kill some people myself, but I can't get away with it. So I read a book. What I do is I insert myself into the story. And I may be reading along, and I said, listen here, buddy. You may be the guy and the hero here, but I know who's doing this, stupid. Look up over here. Yeah, I insert myself. Well, when I'm reading the Bible, I insert myself in the Bible with whoever I'm with. 2 Timothy. Look at, I don't know how far we can get, but look at, he says in verse 2, chapter 1, 2 Timothy, verse 2. To Timothy, my dearly beloved son, grace, mercy, and peace from God the Father and Jesus Christ our Lord. You know where Timothy is? He's in Ephesus. Paul's left him there. You can read that when you read 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 3, I think it is. He's in Ephesus. Paul's left him there. Paul's in Rome. This is not the Acts 28. I see so many preachers make that mistake. They say in Acts 28, Paul goes, they put him in prison, then they cut his off. No, they did not. No, they did not do that then. It doesn't work out. If you study like people like Agrippa and things of that nature, you're going to find when they came into power, when they were disposed and so on and so forth. Paul went into Rome probably in Acts 28 in about 60 or 61 A.D., and he's not going to die until 67. So I think after he's under house arrest for 2 years, they're going to let him go. And I think he may go as far west as Spain and maybe as Tertullian. And others said, the old writers from 3rd, 4th century said he might even went to the British Isles. But then he'll make his way back down to cover the ground that he covered. He's going to end up in Rome. When? I don't know exactly. But he's going to end up in trouble there. Because there's a fellow there in Rome at that time is just, man, he's up to no good. His name is Nero. He comes to that point of authority when he's just 16 years old. He's not going to last but 14 years because he's going to die at 30 years of age in assisted suicide. The Roman Senate turns against him. He runs and flees. One of his own men, he knows what's going to happen. So he has one of his own men stab him in the chest with a knife. But he's wicked. He kills his mother. He kills his brother. He kills his wife, I think it was. He's been married 2 or 3 times. And at the end, he marries a man. Hey, this stuff didn't start just yesterday. It's been around a while. He's wicked, wicked, wicked. And then he has this personality complex that, hey, I'm so great, I need to build a big monstrosity outfit to myself that they're going to call I think it's Dobosaria, which means the golden house. And he wants to build it right there in the center on 200 acres of land in the center of Rome, but something's standing there. But do you know what happened in July of 64 AD? There's a fire. It starts in the Colosseum and it burns. And before it's all over with, it burns for 6 days. Before it's all over and done with, it burns 70% of the city to the ground. Did he do it? They say he did. He just happened to be away at the time, but he probably had somebody else to do it. Tertullian said he did it. I don't know. But I know it paved the way for him to build that Domosaria that he never got completed in his lifetime. But here's the real problem. Somebody's got to take the blame for that burning. He's not going to do it. So you know who gets the blame? The Christians in Rome get the blame. They're the ones that started. Well, they didn't. But they're getting the blame. Does that sound familiar to you today if you watch the news or read the paper? Christians are getting the blame for a lot of stuff today. We're kind of in the way. Kind of in the way. You know what? I'll be glad when the Lord says, hey, yeah, you're right. You're in the way. Let's go. And takes us out of here. So Paul then gets caught there in Rome. I don't know what year, but I believe he writes Timothy, 2 Timothy, in probably the fall of 67. But he's in jail. He's in prison. In fact, he's in the Mamertine prison. He's not just in a regular prison. He's been taken to the Mamertine prison. He's been dropped in a deep hole down in the ground. That's where he's at. And he writes this letter. You know what? I know me. I'd complain. If I was going to write to Timothy, here's what I'd have said. Hey, Timothy, can you get a bail bondsman and get me out of this place? That's what I said. Hey, Timothy, do you realize that for 30 years, son, I've traveled up and down this world. I've traveled probably 15 to 25,000 miles, and most of it on foot. Don't you think? Why do I have to be stuck down in this stink pot of a hole? Get me out of here. But he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. No. He had a real reputation. He had traveled a lot. He had preached before kings and before paupers alike. He had been left for dead on one occasion. He wrote about it there in Acts chapter 13, or 2 Corinthians chapter 2, or 12 rather. And then he'd been through all this stuff. But his message had never changed. It wasn't about him. It's about you and me and somebody else. Because he kept preaching justification by faith. That was his message. And so here he is. He's in prison. 850 miles away in Ephesus is Timothy. I'm with him because I insert myself into the book. We're sitting on the front porch. The mailman comes. So you say, was it a mailman? No. No, nobody really knows. I've read more stories about that stuff. We don't know. But somebody brings him a ladder. And I'm sitting there with him. And he opens it up. And he reads, to Timothy, my dearly beloved son. That's got to have some impact on you. You know, I've got a few letters in my time. I've got a few. I still get some cards, mostly birthday and Father's Day. And by the way, I'll tell you, I keep them. They're in the drawer at my house. Now, when I die, they'll probably be burned. Nobody wants those things. But I like to get them out every now and then just to remind myself why I didn't totally disown them. You know. So I'm sitting there with him, and he opens it up. I can just visualize him as he's saying that. To Timothy, my dearly beloved son. And he just kind of smiles to himself. Thinks about it. My dearly beloved son. Tim, this time last year, son, I was getting ready to go on history tour, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio. I was asked to speak at the oldest Baptist church in Indiana. It's just across the river from Indianapolis Speedway, Indiana. The church building is still there. It's just about ready to fall in, though. They try and keep it up the best they can. Got an old graveyard there. They don't keep it open anymore, but on special occasion, if you ask them, they'll send a caretaker down to open it up for you. And so I was there, and there's about 50 preachers, and so they asked me to preach, and I preached. But before all that, I'd been asked, before I left on the trip, I got a call, would you speak here? Yes, I will. It's the church that sent out Isaac McCoy, the greatest Indian missionary that ever lived. He's buried in Louisville, by the way, in an unmarked grave in Western Cemetery. So I said I would. So I've been thinking about it to him for a few days, and I'd say, Lord, I just need something different to preach. You know, it's something different. You want to. You're preaching to preachers. Well, one night I sleep in a recliner in my office. I know, don't tell me I was bad for my spine. Hey, I'm still walking. So I'm sleeping in my office in the recliner. It must be about 4 o'clock in the morning. God wakes me up. And now he doesn't speak to me. This white hair, I get that out of a bottle. My hair is actually dark black. But so God wakes me up, and God's never spoke to me verbally. Some people he has. I don't argue with him. That's fine. So, but he puts, and you guys that, and people, ladies, anybody, if he's ever spoken to you, you know what I'm talking about. Hey, nudges you somehow, some way. So I get up and I go over to my desk. It's in the same room, and I write it down, what I thought it was. And I go back to bed. Get up about 5:36. The next morning I get up and I remember that I go over and look at it, and I'm trying to, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like this. It was something like this. What is it that you have that's worth everything to you, but isn't worth anything to anybody else? I don't know. You know, that's all I wrote it down there, but I don't know really what it means. So days go by, maybe even a week or two, I don't know. And I'm thinking about that. What is it that I have that's worth something to me, but isn't worth anything to anybody else? I'm sitting there in my recliner, and right beside my recliner, there's a closet. Now I don't keep clothes in there. I keep a few books in there, and I don't have many books anymore, but I keep a few. But down in the bottom of the closet, there's a case, fireproof supposedly, and in the case we keep things like titles to the vehicles and travel documents, things of that nature. And I was just running through there and looking at stuff and seeing And all of a sudden, I pulled out this watch. This is an old, dirty Timex. It's a woman's watch. The stem, it won't turn. It's froze. It's broke. Says 10 after 5. What do you think this watch is worth? At a yard sale, do you think it'd bring 50 cents? No. Why? It don't work. It's dirty. It's not worth anything. But it's worth a lot to me. You know why it's worth a lot to me? This was my mother's. I cannot tell you the number of times I've seen her with this watch on before she died. I doubt if it even worked then. It's not worth anything to anybody, but it's worth something to me. And I dug a little farther and I found what was left of a necklace. No chain. It did have a stone in it. I don't know what happened to that. But inside this necklace, there's a picture of my mother. She was probably 40 years old at the time. This is not real silver. It's not real anything. What's it worth, you think, at a yard sale? 50 cents? Nah. Maybe it had a chain. Maybe somebody would. But it's not worth anything. But it's worth something to me. Because it was my mom's. So I would never sell it. So thinking about what God said to me in His way of impressing me, what is it that you have that's means more to you than anything, but not worth anything to anybody else? I continued to dig. And you know what I found? The most important thing in there. This letter. It was dated 1991. I was living in Florida, and Brother Tim knows a little bit about my past. You know, I was living in Florida. I was living by myself. I was trying to get a roofing company going. I was doing pretty good at it. But, you know, you work all day on the roof with the men, then at night, Brother Jerry, you understand this. You go out and do the bidding. And then you get home, it's dark. I wanted to preach. I mean, I really wanted to preach and teach, but I'd had a problem, and the brethren just didn't like to use me. You know what I mean? They didn't want to use me. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit. Just like you wanted to do at times. I want to quit. I make good money as a roofer. I own the company. And at one time, and I'm not saying this, folks, please, I'm not bragging, but we were given, out of my pocket, $100,000 a year to missions. And I said, I'll just do that, and I won't preach, and I'm fine, I'm doing it, although I like to preach and teach, but I'm tired of fighting the brethren over this stuff. And I went home that night. It's dark. I pull in. I lived in a 55 and up mobile home community. I wasn't old enough, but I knew the guy that owned it, and he sold me a trailer for $2,500, and it was way out in the back, and I stayed out there by myself. But when you came in, there was just a big stack of mailboxes. Everybody had their own, and I hardly ever got any mail, but I said, I'm going to look, and I looked, and in it was this letter. Now, it said, Brittany Winter. That's my granddaughter. She's my pride and joy. She's 36 today. She lives in Hickory, North Carolina. Her and her husband, they have 5 children, very, very involved in church. You couldn't ask for a better person than my granddaughter. Then 5 years old. And so I didn't wait till I got back to my trailer. I got inside my car and I turned on the overhead light and opened it up. I want to quit. Keep that in mind. I want to quit. And I read it, and she said, I love you, best buddy, Papa. That's line number 1. Did you see what Timothy read? To Timothy, my dearly beloved son. That means something to you. But that isn't what made me not quit. You know what made me not quit? The second line, she wrote, I helped a lady get saved today. 5 years old. I'm wanting to quit. I'm tired of the fight. I can do other things, you know. God can use me. You know, I'm just tired of fighting it. But then she writes me this letter. And she says, I helped a lady get saved today. You know what that told me? You better not quit. You can't quit, Papa. You just can't quit, Papa. You know what, Brother Tim? I look back on her today where she's at. And I was just there 2 weeks ago, preaching up there in that area. Went by and we do things together. We're still very close. But I'm thinking, what if I had quit? What if I had quit? You see this? That was her. That was her when she graduated. And it was, I got November 2nd, 1992. And at the time I'm writing this, you're only 6 years old and as yet unsaved. However, I'm trusting God that in the near future, that situation will change. I wrote this for her. I long for the day when I receive a telephone call from you that somebody telling me that you accepted Christ as your Savior. Someday I will turn this Bible over to you. Until then, I intend to spend many hours putting notes upon these pages. Up here at the top, you can't see it. November the 2nd, 1992 at 5 p.m., she called me. Papa, I got saved today. But if I had quit, Tim, if I had quit, there wouldn't have been a young missionary who spent so many years that got saved under my ministry in Russia and finally was thrown out and now is in New York City pastoring a Russian church. If I had quit, there wouldn't be no Maranatha Baptist Church that I started in Somerset, Kentucky. If I had quit, there have been so many countless others who gave their life to Christ and some who have surrendered to the ministry. And if I had quit, but I couldn't quit. And Paul, writing to Timothy, from an old jail cell down in the ground, he's going to take 1,700 words in 2 Timothy and say, Timothy, don't quit. You say, how do you know that, preacher? I'll tell you how I know it. Look over in chapter 3. He reminds him all the things that could go wrong, and they will. But look what he said in verse 14. But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned, and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them. Continue. Timothy, I'm in prison. I'm getting ready to die. He's going to tell him that in the next chapter. I'm getting ready to die. But don't you quit, son. Don't you quit. Don't you quit. You keep going. You keep going. They tell me that Timothy died in the 90s, probably 30 years after this. I don't know. I just know what I heard, what I read. I just wondered though, people, how many times in those next 30 years Timothy got depressed, down and out, and wanted to end it all and just quit. But he took out that letter from Paul and he read it, and said, you know what? I can't quit. I can't quit. Now, I know, folks, where we're at. I know the time we're in. I know what the news says. But I'm telling you one thing. I'm encouraging you, please do not quit. Keep coming to church. Keep telling key people about Jesus. Keep doing what you're doing, because he will come for us one of these days. And he'll take us home. Boy, that'll be good. I may not see you anymore after today, but I'll see you up yonder, I hope. All right. God bless you. Father, we love you.